Sometimes the best bet is just put the mattress on the floor. Hello and welcome to Best Motorcycle Roads. I'm Tom.
And I'm Todd. We have over 65 years of combined motorcycling experience and 30 years of planning and riding motorcycle trips. We're here to share with you everything we've learned over those years.
Our goal at Best Motorcycle Roads is simple. Make your next motorcycle trip the best it can be. We'll dive into technology, planning, packing, the routes, and other tips and everything in between.
From essential prep to unforgettable routes, we've got you covered.
Before we kickstart today's journey, we ask you to sign up for our BMR Rider Alerts. It's our way of keeping you in the loop with the latest rides, tips, and stories. We promise no spam, only the essentials to enhance your motorcycle adventures. Join the BMR crew today. We'll put a link in the show notes. This segment about motorcycle gear reviews and tips we call the Toolkit. Today we'll talk about the GoPro 12 and the Sena Meshport Red. This combo pack is new for us, so what we're trying to do is document more of our trips, and honestly, this will help us get our helmet communicators tied into the video that we're going to shoot on this next one. So
Yeah, that'll be great.
we picked up a GoPro 12, which is pretty amazing in itself, and then I was telling Todd that we picked up a terabyte memory card, the ones that are the size of your your little fingernail. And what's really great about that is, from what we can tell, shooting in 4K, we're going to be able to shoot about 40 hours on the one chip. So hopefully that works out pretty well. And I'm kind of excited to record the audio too.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We have a lot of good conversations when we ride. And,
Some not so good.
Some not so good, but it'll be nice.
Some really bad, actually.
It'll be nice to have some of those,
Yeah.
recorded.
So then the Sena Meshport Red is an add-on device that basically taps into the Sena's mesh port, and then that's all the communicators are also running on the mesh Sena mesh. So then all of those things will be comboed up, and then you connect the Sena mesh with Bluetooth to the camera, and then hopefully it'll be quite a kind of cool thing. I've seen some examples, and it sounds really fun. And I know for me, Todd, and as we're talking about documenting trips, this is the part we're missing right now, like documenting some of these discussions, talks, and not to say that you guys want to hear about everything we talk about, but I know that you and I have some aspirations of just stories that we can capture that they're hard to put into words afterwards. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, they're hard, and sometimes you just forget about those until, a conversation comes up later, so it'll be nice to have those.
Yeah, I agree.
Ride-wise is the section we focus on planning and safety tips. So Travis asked us about different motorcycles. I think that was maybe in the last episode.
Yep, episode 9.
And so let's chat a little bit about standard bikes.
Yeah.
Like technically speaking, like what we call a standard is like a motorcycle that's maybe like 300 to 600 pounds, kind of in that range. And really most important, it's the ones that have that kind of upright riding position.
Yep.
Your foot controls are underneath rather than out front. And, that really actually comes in handy when you see like a big bump in the road or a pothole. You could just almost stand up on those.
Yeah.
The foot pegs are right under you, and get your butt off the seat to absorb that bump.
Yeah.
Whereas on a cruiser, your feet out front,
You're getting tailbone.
you sometimes just take it right on your tailbone.
And I think, honestly, why they call them standard bikes is because they used to be called motorcycles.
Oh, right.
It was all motorcycles. That happened probably until the 70s when people started making choppers and Harleys, honestly. I mean, I think they're just the bike. They were the motorcycle,
Yep.
So that's why I think you'll see or reflect when people are talking about them. Sometimes they also do talk about like a 60s and 70s style. But yeah, totally. Just a round to town motorcycle, still used in many countries, but yeah, I mean, it's a great bike.
And you can take them on long rides as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
You can outfit them with windscreens. You could put bags on them. You could strap a bunch of luggage to them. They're usually made for 2 passengers.
Yep.
And
Well, they have 2 seats. I don't know if they're actually made for 2 people.
okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Good point.
It's a joke. But no, I mean, And in some countries, I've seen up to 3 or 4.
I've seen those. I've seen those
great.
videos as well.
It's the family motorcycle.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, like you said, I think most standard bikes have places to attach things, bags, luggage, different sorts of things. And honestly, that's that's how the Honda Goldwing got started. It was not a touring bike. It was just a motorcycle with a bigger motor on it. You know?
Yeah.
When the Honda Goldwing came out in '75, it's a 1,000cc motor. And in fact, a lot of the luggage was just aftermarket. It wasn't until later on that it became something that was more Vetter was one of the ones that came out with the first luggage and fairings to kind of turn them into a touring bike. So yeah, standard bikes are great. I mean, they're great to ride, easy to ride, simple.
Yeah, probably easy to work on too because there's not a lot of plastic or covering.
That's why
the engine is exposed.
Yep.
And, you can really kind of see and get at everything. And it's one of those bikes that if people are just getting started, a standard motorcycle is great.
They're cheap.
They're cheap.
Not a lot of plastic.
They're a little bit lighter, than some of the big cruisers and touring bikes, and sport touring bikes.
But they're comfortable to ride.
They're easy to park, easy to get into your garage.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a motorized bicycle, really. I mean, the same feet position and all that. So yeah. Yeah, you had found a few bikes out there that were standards.
Yeah, like a Honda CB500, Kawasaki the Z650, Suzuki has the SV650,
which is basically the old Bandits. Like, there's a lot of people know what the Bandit looks like.
Yep. BMW has kind of a standard bike, like the F900R.
Yeah. And even the old BMW GS horizontally opposed, those are all standards. Even their adventure bikes are really a standard bike. They call them adventures, but they really are standards.
Yeah. And I've seen the ones we call standard now, like I think like the Ducati Monster. I think they just have one seat on them. I don't think they're
generally,
those aren't made for 2-up.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are one.
The next segment is what we call the mile marker. It's our story segment. So the theme of today is really documenting the trip. I think this is something that we've done okay at times and just horrible at other times.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes down to planning again, and that seems to be a common theme whenever we talk. But I mean, even with beginning of the trip, starting with a plan, I think just sharing the plan just helps people connect. It helps people get an idea of what's all going to be going down, going on.
Yeah.
And something that I think is just brilliant that we've used now is just using your Google Calendar, right? How easy is that? So I know you did it recently when we've been planning our next trip, and you had just went ahead, booked the rooms, and then you put the reservation and the confirmation number, boom, right in an event for that day. And it's like, that's awesome, right? And so then doing the same thing, because one of the struggles that we used to kind of have is how are we going to get the maps? How are we going to share the maps? Who's going to know what is this the updated map? Or is this the old map? And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think using the calendar events for each day for that works fantastically as well. So, and it just gives people a heads up of what to come, where we're going. They can look at it, and then if you update it, boom, it's done. So I love that idea. And so that kind of starts with the plan. So it gets an idea of where we're going. And then, but what's really the best part is the pictures, maybe the stories. But so, I think, and we haven't done this yet, so this is going to be new for us for this year, is kind of, number one, encouraging everyone to try to document more. Just being verbal about it. But second, what I wrote down was, it's a lot of pressure to make one person that person. So if we can say, hey, everyone participate, take pictures, that would be good. So, but one thing I know we're terrible have done is get the picture of like before you leave, like the before picture.
Yeah.
And that can it doesn't have to be anything special. A selfie, right before you pull out, boom, take a picture. And then if you flip that over and you get wherever you guys are all going to be at, everyone is going to be last. Because sometimes we have people, like on one of our next trips, you're going to go a different direction at the end as others. So that we should just get that picture then too. So at least we kind of have the bookends, right?
Yeah, agreed. And along the way, I mean, You can go into your phone and take some notes, but you can just have a little notebook too.
Right.
And just
it doesn't have to be.
Write down a couple of things that happened throughout the day, or something you saw, or the weather, or the road you were on. It's just nice to have that written down, and then maybe later when you're done with the trip, you can transfer it into electronic storage.
One idea I had here too is maybe we should try to do that, since we haven't again done a great job of this, but trying to think about how we can. I think just having the podcast has helped us kind of re-envision how we take motorcycle trips. And I was thinking, like, okay, every day at dinner, we're generally done before we eat our evening meal. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's one thing we could talk about. We could just take notes for the day at dinner time and say, okay, what did you remember about today? What do you. And I think the only thing you miss then is the antics that happen after dinner, which, you could always come back for.
True.
But yeah. And
Those are easier to remember than...
And then just to pick every day at the start of the day, end of the day. Even if it's just people getting junk off their bike or putting stuff on their bike in the morning, I think those are good. And then what I try to do too is every time we stop for gas or food, at least take one picture. And it does a couple things, right? So we'll talk about in a minute the Google timeline, but when you take those pictures, the modern phones, unless you've turned it off, it saves GPS location of where you took the picture and the time of day you took the picture. And I cannot tell you how many times I went back to those and looked and said, oh, well, shoot, it was March 12th of 2013. I would not have known that,
Yeah.
And I think that is the other piece that's helpful.
Yeah, to have that timestamp on the photos. And I've done the same thing where I start looking through photos, and luckily you can line them up by time. And,
exactly.
Yeah, then you go, oh, that's what we did. That's right.
Yeah, and well, it's kind of cool too now, the AI and some of these photo saving places, Google Photos, Amazon Photos, they're starting to get better about visualizing what's in the picture too. So you can say motorcycle, and then it narrows it down, gets me to the right time. Then I go back and hit dial into that. So tons and tons of people, of course, are using a lot of action cams. You see it all over YouTube. They're beautiful. It's great, right? And so so we talked about the GoPro 12 with the Sena mesh port red. The Insta360 is a very popular camera now. If you've seen this one, it almost looks like there's a camera floating in front or behind of the bike. That's the Insta360, and they have a little. So you usually mount them on a selfie stick, and then the software will eliminate that selfie stick. So that's how you get that cool picture.
Okay.
So if you ever think, how in the world are they doing this? It's a selfie stick, but then they use they kind of overlap the picture and get rid of it, and which is pretty cool. So that's cool, and that's video. And like we talked about with these mega cards now, and on the GoPro 12 that we're going to be leveraging, I bought a weatherproof battery door cover, and then you can slip a power cord right through, weatherproof. And the GoPro 12 is already weatherproof, so is the Insta360. So now you can record and not worry about the battery dying, because that is a sin. And the GoPro, they're just trying. I mean, they only have so much space, and it takes so long. So one trick that I've used previously, though, to that is I'd mount a camera, and then I just put it every 60 seconds, take a picture, or every 2 minutes, take a picture. And, it's not video, but man, if I go back through those, there's always great pictures. In fact, the current picture that we have on bestmotorcycleroads.com was one that I took as a 60-second interval picture.
Now, when you say you took it, did you physically push the button? Or it just set it on a timer?
So it's like time lapse, but you can go into a photo mode, and then you can say take a picture every, and usually it'll be like 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30, 60, and I'll set it on 60 or 200, as much as I can. Not 15 minutes, but, somewhere in the 1 to 5 minute range. And then you just end up with a lot of great pictures. And then usually what I would do is I'd change the battery at the next stop, put a new card in if I thought it needed it. You can usually get many thousand pictures. You'll run out of battery before you run out of card. So
now you don't have to worry about putting a new battery in, because you're going to have it plugged in, right?
The new one with the video, I would highly recommend looking at these waterproof doors.
Yeah.
Because, oh my gosh, what a difference. I mean, you're talking, you could be 90 minutes of video and that's it on a GoPro, which is a lot when you think about it, but then not a lot when you think about an 8-hour day.
Right.
So so the new one will be always running. So I'll have to stop it, and then hopefully we'll figure out the comms, and it'll be pretty good. So just permanent mount. We have many pictures that I don't want to totally admit on, but many years, I bought a Sony camera because it had a door. When you flip the door open, it was a digital camera. It would turn the camera on.
Oh, yeah.
And then the one I had was perfect because I could take a picture with my finger,
Yeah.
and I knew it was just worked. So, 2015 and earlier, that's what we used to document while we were riding pics.
Yeah.
And it just, it was okay. And I tried mounting a digital SLR on there, and it was okay. It was just always having problems with the zoom. Like it was autofocus. It was
Focusing
not
the whole
loving
time.
that while you're driving down the road at all. And then one other just quick tip before I get go, because this will happen every time. Clean your lens off at every stop, because
bugs.
I have 1,000 pictures that would have been amazing if it hadn't had a bug in it. So maybe I have to run those through AI. So then this is something we've struggled with, and I don't know that we've completely found a solution. If anybody says what they do, that'd be great. It's just the long-term storage, because what you and I have been trying to do now as we start this podcast is kind of put these stories back together, and archive them in the trip mode instead of my Google Photos, your Amazon photos. Like it just is. Then they're everywhere, right? So, looking for something. If anyone has good tips for that. Long-term photo storage, and then when you add video, it just gets gargantuan.
Right.
We're going to be talking about we'll have 300 megabytes or gigabytes of video storage when we come back. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about the Google timeline. It's been really nice to go back.
Yeah, I missed talking about that. I'm glad you brought
to
that
go
up.
back and look at my Google timelines from 8 years ago, because it'll show you where you stopped for meals. It'll show you where you stayed at the hotels, and then you can of course see the route and all the roads. And
It's the secret hack for me when you're like, oh, I can't believe you remember this. I didn't. I just went back and looked at Google Timeline.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, over the years you can tell when I switch phones, and because it'll tell you on there too. So, the Google Timeline is cool as long as you're not paranoid about everybody tracking you. If you can get over that part, it's great.
Yeah.
It's cool to see all the places you've been to. So, yeah. So I guess I thought I'd talk a little bit about a couple things. We talked about the standard bikes. So I've taken 2 trips on standard bikes, and both were fun. Lake Michigan, Loop of Lake Michigan, 2007. 2001 Yamaha FZ1. Most people look at that bike and they'll say it's a sport bike. It's definitely not. Sport bike is when your feet are behind you. And this is not that. It's a standard, but it was not a comfortable bike, nor was I in the shape that I needed to be in to make that a comfortable trip. I went back and actually used the Google Timeline to look at some pictures, and full-faced helmet, no modular, because we weren't into that then. And then the windshield, it was about that big. It was about 10 inches wide, 14 inches tall. So it was interesting. And then that second day, and this is where we were documenting with our handheld cameras, because I've got some cool pictures of this fog, but we headed up in the UP north on Highway 41. We probably got up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was getting water, no rain, but it was fog. It was just, you're right next to that, and it was just brutal, which is also why I was just going to mention why I like gloves that have a little plastic, my friend used to call it the wiper blade, but it's like a plastic rubber thing that you can kind of just scrape across.
Yeah.
Works wonders when you don't have a full Goldwing windshield and you're actually eating bugs and dirt and stuff. But yeah, so that was a great trip on a standard motorcycle. One of my most memorable parts of that is laying on a concrete sidewalk on the third day thinking we're never going to make it back.
I saw pictures, I think.
Oh God, it was terrible. But that's also where the, sometimes you got to move the mattress on the floor. We went to Traverse City, and there was 4 of us, and we had the last room in Traverse City.
Gotcha.
So there was one bedroom, which the couple went in, and then Brad and I pulled that awful pull-out couch mattress just on the floor, and we figured it out. So, yeah. My second one, though, is one of was still the longest trip I think I've ever taken, 78 Goldwing. That's a standard bike. But my favorite part of that was the luggage, because as we talked about earlier, there was no official luggage from Honda yet, really soon after they did.
Yeah.
But Vetter had it, but that one had the Samsonite luggage on it. So that's the best, man.
So cool.
Yep. I love that luggage.
Did the luggage come off? Like, could you carry it?
Oh, yeah.
With you? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They had like the barrel lock
Yeah.
on the back, and you could it was just like a barrel lock. It was a screw, and you just unscrewed it, and it popped off.
Beautiful.
You can carry it right on in. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Don't tell Colleen, my wife, this, but I have a brand new set upstairs here that someday we'll find another Goldwing to restore and put it on. But honestly, like in all practical terms, the standard bike is probably just the most adaptive, reliable bikes there are, and they're usually the cheapest.
Yeah.
They're just kind of no nonsense, and now with technology, they're pretty decent bikes. I mean, there's good bikes. A lot of people ride them for long distances. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. The podcast can be found on bestmotorcycleroads.com/podcast. All the information you need will be there, but you can subscribe on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, Pocket Casts, and YouTube.
This is the interactive segment. We will be looking for input from you. We want you to send us your questions and suggestions for roads, topics, and anything else you have on your mind. Before I talk about today's Roadside Q&A,
All right.
I need to give a shout out to Interceptor Moto. He's been enjoying the podcast and sent us a note on YouTube, and he is looking forward to taking a ride on Tail of the Dragon at some point. But hey, thanks Interceptor Moto for your comment. And then we actually have a question from Phil, and he's asking, how do you maintain comfort during the extended hours of riding on the road? And boy, there's all kinds of tricks to that, but really getting your feet into different positions. I find that, I'll stretch my legs out sometimes and lay my legs over the top of my highway pegs.
Yeah.
Other times I'll move my feet behind me and hook them onto the passengers, like floorboards. Just for me, it's moving my legs around a little bit, or straightening up. And I do have a backrest on my bike, so sometimes I'll just kind of lean back. But how about you? I mean, what are you doing to maintain your comfort?
When I think legs, I think my knees. My knees are what get. We're older. The knees are not as good as they used to be. So for me, it's that. A lot of times too, a lot of bikes you can buy the risers, like bar risers for. So I know for like the newer Goldwing, it's 9/16 of an inch taller, which seems like nothing.
Nothing, right?
And then 2.5 inches back, which doesn't seem like much either. But what I've always been told is to get those elbows below elbow is kind of in that same neighborhood as your handle, your hand grips. And that way you don't get too, you're not because you don't want your shoulders up too high. You want to get the elbows like below your kind of grips, and then your shoulders are more in a relaxed position.
That makes sense.
And that way you don't get kind of, because I've had my shoulders get this, like on the FZ1 ride, I remember many times I'm laying up on the front bars with both hands like that, Windshields, we've talked about that a little bit, like breaking the wind, if you don't want to go riding, if you haven't been out riding for long and you don't have much of a windshield, your neck's going to be in trouble because you're fighting the wind with the helmet the whole time, and if you're used to it, it's fine. You just get more strong neck muscles. But yeah, those are the two big things there. And you said backrest too, and you're going to get that more in these touring motorcycles. But, sometimes you can just put, like many years we put one of the bags behind you and use that for the backrest. It's just nice to get positions. I think you mentioned it. And then one more thing I'll talk about, and maybe we can highlight it in another podcast in the future, but staying hydrated does help too. And I'm working on a rig to kind of get me some water. I'm not sure I want the coffee cup the size of, a small nation state on my handlebars like you guys do. But no, I mean, just keeping that going, I think is good.
Stay hydrated.
Now it's time for the last mile. It's our way to close up the episode with our reflections. So Todd, what'd you think of this one? What stuck out?
Well, just documentation. Why it's good to document, because
I can't remember crap anymore.
Well, that's just it. I mean, for some reason, my memory just isn't that good, and there's so many times you guys will say, remember when we were on this road or that road? Remember when we did this? Remember? And I'm always like,
we're just making it up.
Was I there?
You're like, timeline does not say that.
So it's great to have these timelines. It's great to write it down as soon as you're done and have the pictures that go along with the timeline and the timestamps.
Yeah.
Because there's been so many great things we've done. And now that I go back through my Google timeline and really start to line everything up, wow. I mean, we've seen some stuff, and it's been great. So, yeah, I just highly recommend document.
I couldn't agree more. And one of my favorite things, and you see these coming up on your a little the screen devices here, there, and everywhere, but you'll just see a picture come up and you're like, oh yeah, like I totally forgot about that. Like, oh my goodness, there's,
Yeah.
the kids last night we were talking about tenderloins, and so I brought up the picture of the
Sure.
megaloin, like, and it was just those are the things, like you said. I think when you start to forget about those things, then going on the next trip doesn't always maybe seem as fun until you start to realize, like you just said, like, oh yeah, we did that, we did that, we did that. I know that one of my favorite burger places is Moonshine, and when we were on a trip driving I'm like, we're gonna be close with my kids, and they're like, can we go to Moonshine? And like, so it's just funny how it just kind of carries on. So yeah, I couldn't agree with the documentary. And then the next episode, we're going to talk about navigating as you're riding at night. Not something you necessarily want to do, but it happens sometimes. So if this episode revved up your day, don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share it with your crew. We're all about the thrill of the ride and the bond it creates.
Keep the spirit of adventure alive, and remember, bikes, friends, and endless roads, the stories ride forever. Take care.